So Jesus, he's with the disciples. He's on the road to Bethany. This is east of Jerusalem, slightly east. And they see that fig tree that he cursed before. And it's withered. The disciples say, look, it's withered. And we get this weird saying from him, where he's just like, if you have faith enough, and I asked this to my men's study last night, and highly educated worship leader, studying the Bible, reads it more than me, said, you can throw mountains into the sea. I'm like, wrong. What does it say? It says, this mountain. And that got me thinking, what mountain is Jesus likely referring to? Jerusalem. And I kind of looked into it, and this is something I've seen before, off topic, but it was about, is Jerusalem the Whore of Babylon? So we see Rome being the Whore of Babylon, because, there's 7 mountains. Well, there's 7 mountains of Jerusalem. And that's all the context I want to give you, because we have the Mount of Olives, we have the Temple Mount, there's the mounts where the Fortress of Antonia was built on. So there's all these little mountains. There's kind of built in this little range. So it's Mount Zion's kind of this collection of mountains, and Jerusalem kind of sits there, right? If you've ever been there, it's kind of a sloping area. The city slowly rises up, and especially over time, we get these they're called tells, where cities are built on top of cities, so they start to look more of like a mountain anyways. And then I was just thinking, because I was reading a lot of Isaiah, just had my 2-month-old now, and his name's Isaiah, so I've been making my way through Isaiah. And the thing I spoke on was about the fig tree, and something I had studied a while in the past, and I kind of put it aside, because I just felt like, if this was something that was worth doing, someone would have done this before. Someone would have talked about agricultural terms in the Bible and how they're all defined in the Old Testament, and every time Jesus uses them, he's using them on purpose. Because a lot of the studies I've watched, teachings I've watched, searching on YouTube, and I get, when he's talking about the fig tree here, it's different than when he's talking about the parable, the lesson of the fig tree, and all these, there's kind of like 3 little fig tree stories we get in the Gospels. Maybe there's more that I don't know. If you can let me know, and I can go through those quickly. But reading Isaiah 54 starts out, barren one, right? Barren one. So Jesus initially sees this fig tree, and it's barren, right? He's like, leaves, look at the leaves, and there's no fruit. And people get kind of stumped on, well, it wasn't the season for figs. The Bible tells us it's not the season for figs. What was he expecting? Maybe he necessarily wasn't hungry, but he was just checking to see if there was these little seeds that would appear. These little seeds, I forget what they're called, like takish or something, is the Arabic for it. And if they're not there, then there's not going to be fruit. There's not going to be fruit in the summer when the leaves actually bear the fruit. And sometimes travelers would eat these little kind of like seeds that would fall off, and eventually, then we get the sprouting and the budding. So he doesn't see these seeds, so he curses it, because and this is where I get divided from most of the teachings I've watched. Every teaching I've watched, I'm not going to say most of them, maybe there's some out there I haven't seen yet, but everyone I watched kind of makes this 1948 Israel case. This is Israel, 1948 is the fig tree. They have these elaborate explanations for it. So he goes on to Jerusalem, and I believe it was Passover, and he flips the tables, right? Everyone knows that story. And he goes, leaves back, comes that way, and then we see the fig tree again. So we've come full circle. And then he says, this mountain, if you have faith enough, you can throw this mountain into the sea. And most people take this idea and they're like, if you just have enough faith, you can do anything. You can curse a fig tree like me. Really, that's what you're getting out of this? Has anyone casted mountains into the sea? Why would he make such a strange metaphor? Maybe he's talking about something else. So we read Isaiah 54, talking about the barren one. It's talking about the mountains and the hills being made low, Now, these are the things we see in Zechariah. It talks about the mountain, Mount Zion, and sometimes we have Mount Zion referred to the heavenly New Jerusalem, or the Holy Mountain is the New Jerusalem. So we have to be careful of which one is being referred to. But the point being, we know that Jerusalem's going to be made laid waste. Even more than we saw in 70 AD, even more than what Titus did to it, okay? We're talking about a day of the Lord calamity like this is going to be pressed. We have this kind of the wine imagery, I think Isaiah 63, pressing, and the flattening of this land, especially like in Edom, and just what happens on the day of the Lord, day of trumpets, 10 days of awe leading up to Yom Kippur. And that's when we see Jesus really make the atonement and become king, and his city comes down. I believe his city comes down at that point, start of the millennial reign. So we have the resurrection of the saints, we have the rapture, all these things culminating because the fall feasts have not yet been fulfilled, and he's going to come back and fulfill them. And I think when he's saying of faith enough, this mountain can be thrown into the sea, he's talking about you got to let go of this. You have to let go of this temple system now because it's false. It's being run by these Sadducees, and I've been all about the Sadducees lately. Whole other video. I don't want to get too much into it, but the point I was making at the men's group last night is they're always trying to steal the inheritance of Jesus. It's all about what Satan is trying to do, what the Antichrist is doing. He's trying to steal his inheritance. It's not just the earth, but it's his priesthood. It's what Adam would have had, right? Christ is the second Adam. Adam was supposed to be the caretaker of the garden. He was the first Melchizedekian priest king. He controlled the garden. The garden would have gone to spread out through the whole world. He would have been fruitful and multiplied. And that all fell apart, right? And just randomly ran into the parable of the tenants. I can't forget where it is. It's in Mark or why I came to it. I think it was right next to one of the fig tree ones. I'm like, well, let me practice my agricultural terms. I don't have everything in front of me, but I'll just do this from what I remember. So I was talking about the vineyard, right? The parable of the tenants. Essentially, God makes a vineyard, right? His master makes his vineyard, and he gives it to these tenants. All right, so what is the vineyard? We can say, oh, it's Israel. Let's say it's the promised land. How about that? Promised land, the garden. The promised land, fully fulfilled, is not just what the New Jerusalem will encompass, but eventually it will be the whole earth. And he built this tower, right, in the vineyard. Immediately we think, okay, yeah, New Jerusalem. It's New Jerusalem, or it's Old Jerusalem. It's better to think of that it's New Jerusalem, and this was a tower that he took up to heaven, right? Took the garden up to heaven, and he'll bring it back down, right? And that's why we see Ezekiel's temple. That's why Jesus has to go to heaven, because that's where the heavenly temple is, because it originally was on earth. And then we see the fence around the vineyard. And remember that Hebrews thought of cosmology different than we do. There was a big rakia, this firmament, this enclosing dome around the world, because remember the whole world was supposed to be the garden. So there's this fence around it, which keeps the tenants in more than other things, but also maybe secures it from other angelic forces. Maybe limits Satan to a point. Another topic, but there is this fence. And then we're like, who are the tenants? And that's a tricky one. Who are these bad guys that didn't take care of it? Well, I think back to the Sadducees, back to people like Korah. You know what Korah wanted? They wanted the inheritance. They wanted the priesthood. Things that weren't given to them. Even Satan, right? He wanted to be Adam. He thought he should have what Adam had. He was the most prestigious angel, if you will, standing before God, standing before the assembly. He wanted that kingship role, that priesthood. Sadducees held on to it so dear. That's why they got rid of so many books, trying to hide the priesthood, trying to hide this king priest to come. Alexander Jannaeus trying to be one. Herod the Great is almost a picture of one. I'm pretty sure he thought he was Messiah. Over and over again we see that same picture. You don't think we're going to see that again? The Sadducees return? So we're saying 1948 Israel because, and they're like, well, look at all these trees started to grow in 1948. And we have, in Syria, we got the cypress tree and all these other trees. And that's all a sign. Remember what Jesus said about the fig tree? Because we need to connect them. We're seeing them sprout. We're seeing them sprout. You have to say like, oh, they're literally there. Because we already know this is a spiritual metaphor. It's going to start to sprout. It doesn't mean that when we literally see the fig tree sprouting, because you don't think Satan be like, I'm going to twist that and we're going to make this literally sprout. Because Israel blossoming and becoming a nation was the result of a lot of corrupt Zionism and it wasn't land wasn't magically healed. They brought in waterways. They forced this stuff to happen. And I'm not against Jews. No, there's a lot of good believing Jews that believe in Yahweh. They're devout. That's not the government of Israel today. That's not the Zionists that control the media. These are the Sadducees. There's been a war ever since. Even before they were named Sadducees and Pharisees, they've been at odds with each other. The Pharisees are a good picture of the Jewish believers. And these were the Nicodemuses, the ones that understood the resurrection, understood the scriptures enough to recognize Messiah. Sadducees only interact with Jesus because they wanted to stump him, they wanted to kill him, they wanted to put down anything he was teaching so they could hold on. Pharisees were legit curious, legitimately wanted to know. And a lot of them were the ones that became Christians, right? Everyone who wrote the New Testament was a Jew. You got to remember that. And then we know a lot from what Isaiah, right? A lot of Isaiah talks about Judah and Ephraim, the two sticks. So we have these Pharisees that will eventually recognize Messiah. I was watching a teach from Monty Judah the other day, and he said one of the signs of a B'nai Ephraim, or whatever, however you say it, Ephraimite, of the lost tribes, if you will, lost northern kingdom. One of the ways Judah will recognize them, the Jews will recognize them, is that they will be able to tell Judah who the Messiah is. It's just, it's like so in your face. It's like, and this is Jewish teaching. It's not Christian teaching. It's Jewish teaching, and it's like, oh, come on, guys. You know that's the church. That's the church. That's the lost tribes. And we both can learn a lot from each other. The two sticks shall become one. So Isaiah has been a great tool, a good lens to look at the gospel through, and I'm sure there's other great books. But a lot of those agricultural terms are defined there for us. That's where we get all these definitions. So finishing up that kind of parable of the tenants, he sends his son, right? Obviously, he sends the prophets, he sends these people to convince them, sends his son, they kill his son, picture Jesus. All the other things that we've learned about this are true. It's just these definitions that trip us up a little bit. Getting the framework, it's important. And then he gives the vineyard to somebody else. So he's not taking it from the Jews, and that's the point I'm trying to make here. He's not taking it from the Jews. He's taking it from the Sadducees. He's taking it from Satan. Even you can make a case for like the Watchers were these caretakers of the garden. They came down onto earth, and they were to teach man to get to know God better, not just to give him like farming, architecture, and all these things. They messed up, right? They were caretakers. And we can't blame angels for everything, right? We gotta blame ourselves too. But we can lump them in there for sure. Satan is, I believe, one of those watchers. he didn't receive the same punishment, but also points. So, and the final, it talks about the wine press, right? He has a vineyard and he eats the grapes, and he presses them. It's just a picture of what we're going to go through, the pressing. So if you think that the rapture is going to happen, to take you away before the tribulation, it doesn't really sound like you're going to be pressed. We need to be pressed to make it be good wine. And a lot of times you go down into the wine vat, if you will, which I think is Sheol. You get pressed into wine, life comes hard, and you're tested, and you die. But then you become something better, right? Wine is better than grapes, and that's when you'll be resurrected and glorified, a new creation. It all fits the metaphor. It actually makes sense. And I'm at work. Hope you guys like that. Read Isaiah.